The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good morning, everyone. This is Laura Sant from UNC's Highway Safety Research Center. We provide support to NCDOT for the Watch For Me program. And this is our informational meeting for prospective and returning applicants. So we've got about a little over an hour of time to talk about the Watch For Me program today and help answer your questions. I am joined by my HSRC colleagues here, Kristen Blank, who manages a lot of the training and communications elements of the program.
Good morning, everyone.
I'm also joined by Nancy Pullen-Supert, who has worked very closely with us in the past on the program management and is an expert in some of the school-related safety issues that we touch on.
Hi.
Hi, Nancy. And then we also have a new team member who's going to be joining us very soon in March, Sarah O'Brien, who also brings a lot of great ped bike and safety program expertise. So that is the team from UNC's Highway Safety Research Center that's involved in this project. And Ed Johnson is with us from NCDOT. He's with the Division of Bicycle and Pedestrian Transportation and has really been a great champion for ped bike safety and how this Watch For Me program gets coordinated with other elements that NCDOT works on.
Good morning, everyone. Glad you're here.
So thank you all for joining us today. And I'm going to give you a brief sense with our agenda here on what we'll cover in this call. I'll give you a little bit of background on the Watch For Me program and what motivated it to come into existence, some of what we've worked on and achievements to date. And then I'll really focus on what's new with the 2018 program, what participating communities get out of the program and what the requirements to be involved are. I'll walk through some of the steps to participate in terms of the application process, and we'll have plenty of time for questions and answers. At any time, if you have a question, you can enter that into the chat box. Kristen will be helping field those, and she may be able to answer some of them in real time, or we might save them for the end and have a bigger discussion around some of the issues. I know that we've got a mixed group here. Some folks are really familiar with the Watch For Me program. They've been involved in the past. Others are new to it, and they're really just considering whether it's a good fit for their community. And so we'll try to answer all your questions and really get to some of the basics of the program. So the motivation for Watch For Me NC came out of the fact that every year we have almost 3,000 pedestrians hit on roadways in North Carolina and another 850 bicycle crashes. Many of those lead to severe and disabling injuries, permanently impacting families and communities and sometimes leading to fatalities. And we recognize that to address these issues really requires a comprehensive approach. And you may have become familiar with the different E's: education, enforcement, encouragement, and engagement. Sometimes emergency response is included. Certainly the role of engineering and planning in the built environment is a big part of addressing safety issues, as well as taking into account equity considerations in how we do our work and then evaluating that. And so the role of the Watch For Me program is really to bring together everybody, and I think we've really placed an emphasis on some of the non-traditional partners, such as law enforcement and educators and the community at large, that can complement and strengthen all of the work that NCDOT is doing from the infrastructure side. So the goals of this program are, in the short term, to really help raise awareness of pedestrian and bicycle safety issues, needs, and laws, and to have a better understanding at the community level of what those issues are and how we can better communicate that in order to improve behaviors, to improve the built environment, and create a culture of safety. Because that's our goal in the long term, is to create this culture of safety that can help us prevent pedestrian and bicycle injuries and fatalities. So we began this program by looking at the crash data in North Carolina, analyzing data for numerous cities in the state at large to really understand what crashes were occurring and what some of the issues were that we might focus on in this program. What has traditionally been a focus for many communities is increasing driver yielding. We see very low compliance with laws requiring drivers to yield to pedestrians at crosswalks, driveways, and when turning. And that's a large portion of the crash data that we see. Safe passing is another issue that we've seen a lot. And so you'll see a lot of our messaging around making room for bikes. We see that almost a quarter of bike crashes involve some kind of improper passing maneuver by a motorist. So that's a big aspect as well. In North Carolina, we also have issues with attentiveness, sometimes related to distraction, but also visibility. A lot of our crashes occur in nighttime hours. And so finding creative ways to make community members be a part of the solution, to be more visible, and to identify some of these needs and how the community can play a role and how agencies can play a role is a big part of the discussion and the work that we do through the Watch For Me program. So just to clarify some potential misconceptions out there, I wanted to talk a little bit about what the program isn't. We have seen some folks have the sense that it's a jaywalking or anti-jaywalking campaign. That's really not what it's about. As you can see from my previous slide, we're looking at specific safety issues that affect pedestrians and bicyclists, and it's not about assigning blame to a person or a behavior, but it's finding a more comprehensive solution. And those solutions take time, so we don't consider this to be a one-time effort or a media blitz. And the problems are nuanced, and so they don't require something like a flyer distribution or just a one-time conventional enforcement operation. It's really more about building a comprehensive program that is partner-led, data-driven, and long-term. So that's what we aim to help build capacity with our partnering communities to be able to accomplish. To be able to look at this crash prevention model here and identify what are the individual behavior changes we need to focus on, what is an effective way to do that. At the same time, look at our own organizations and institutions and see, what changes can we be making that will support the right behaviors that we want to see happening. And then more broadly, how does the built environment support these change, and how can we help identify problems and solutions that will continue providing support for safe behaviors. And then again, at large, how do we create that culture of safety? So that's the philosophy behind the Watch For Me program, and that's what really informs a lot of our work and the training that we offer. So just a little bit more on the history side. We began in 2012 as a demonstration grant from NHTSA, and we spent 2 years pilot testing and evaluating the program. In 2014, we launched the statewide program where communities could apply and be selected to participate if they met the conditions to be involved. And then ever since, we've continued a statewide expansion. And you can see we've now been growing pretty steadily. We, in 2017, had 32 communities. We do reach every part of the state. We have small communities, less than 10,000 people being involved as coalitions. We also have, some of the biggest cities in the state that are involved. We have college towns, we have beach communities, we have mountain communities. So really, we feel that the program is scalable and transferable to any context within the state. And there is no one-size-fits-all approach to how a community works on some of the Watch For Me elements. Each community finds a different way to fit the Watch For Me program to meet its own needs. So we get asked a lot, what are the communities doing under the Watch For Me program? And so here's kind of a short list of some common elements of the Watch For Me activities that we hear. Almost all of our communities have formed pretty broad coalitions and developed plans to do pedestrian and bicycle safety outreach, community engagements, law enforcement, and making connections between those activities and their engineering and public works activities. A lot of them organize kickoff events to help them engage with the media and the public. Several folks find that working with schools is one of the easiest and most effective ways to address pedestrian and bicycle safety issues. They also very often are engaging with city councils and elected leaders. And working with and through law enforcement is, as I mentioned, a really big part of the program. Law enforcement has a very unique role within the community in that they can be ambassadors for a safety culture, but also can really understand the issues on the ground and identify what safety issues are happening as first responders, and then have that relationship with other agencies to make plans. And what we're really wanting to do is make sure that folks are working beyond sometimes traditional silos that we know occur, because sometimes that's the way our funding mechanisms reinforce. So here is a list of some of the common partners. I mentioned the police and sometimes county sheriff departments are typically involved, as well as planning, public works, and engineering agency staff. We often have universities working either with an independent coalition or as part of their municipality. Parks and Recs departments are often a really great resource for communities when they're looking to put on events and engage with the public. And I know I've already talked about school districts, but there's also Safe Kids, Safe Communities coalitions, and other local advocacy groups that can be a really good partner in terms of understanding the needs of the community and tailoring the program, and also getting some of the program messaging back out to the community. On the enforcement side, we see a lot of work being done with our Watch For Me partners to engage through schools, through community centers, local businesses. In the most recent few years, we've had several communities report success with what they're calling caught being good tickets, just to reinforce positive behaviors and build a connection with the community and have an opportunity to talk about pedestrian and bicycle safety. We also work closely with our law enforcement to help them build capacity to identify high crash areas and to understand what candidate locations might be best suited for any kind of targeted operations, or to think about what the enforcement role is in identifying engineering needs. So I think one big takeaway from the Watch For Me program is that law enforcement can look different in different places, and that it doesn't have to be thought of as the typical citation approach. That is really only one tool in the toolbox, and we try to help expand officers' opportunities to identify other roles in which they might be effective in addressing pedestrian and bicycle safety issues. So here's just a couple of pictures of some of the media-based outreach that a lot of communities do. They do tend to have press events to try to engage the media on what's happening. We work a lot to provide support on how they can use social media effectively as well, since that's a really important avenue for communication. And then you can see some of the materials that are provided that get put into use at some of these types of events. one of the roles of the Highway Safety Research Center is to help track the program and evaluate its successes and limitations, and help to continue to evolve and grow, and provide the evidence for what works and what doesn't. And so we closely work with the communities to understand what outcomes they are seeing and being able to document. So some of what we've heard is here on this slide, and I put the link there to watchformenc.org/about. If you scroll to the bottom of that page, you will see our community profiles. We have close to 24 profiles for each community. You can see exactly how they partnered with different folks, what activities they performed, and what outcomes they reported. And we've organized them by community size, because I think it's a little bit easier to see how the Watch For Me program works in different contexts. But by and large, we hear a lot of communities report that they have an increased awareness of pedestrian and bicycle safety issues. They're talking more about it at their community meetings and their city councils. The officers who take part in the training that we provide have more clarity on the rules. They understand their role a little bit better, and how they might conduct specific operations or be part of pedestrian and bicycle safety conversations more generally. We have also seen the various municipalities make changes to their ordinances, build stronger relationships with schools, and have just a more consistent and upheld and supported process for when traffic citations do get issued. And we're seeing that many communities really integrate Watch For Me into their other plans and policies. And part of that is because the Watch For Me program gives them a reason to come together and continue having an emphasis on these issues. We've also been measuring different outcomes at various times along the way since the program began. One of the things that we have been able to document is in many of the Watch For Me communities where we were monitoring specific crosswalks, we saw that driver compliance with yielding laws was improving, and that we were seeing improvements in crosswalk use and pedestrian and bicycle behaviors as well. We have now documented dozens of resolutions and policies that have been passed. And I mentioned we do have active safety coalitions in all of our communities, and that officers really feel like they have, they've been reporting to us a stronger knowledge and capacity to work with their community on these issues. So we have a published record of some of this evaluation, and I can point you to articles that are in a couple of different journals. And last year we were very excited to become the recipient of the Peter K. O'Rourke Special Achievement Award, which Ed was the recipient of at the Governor's Highway Safety meeting. That to us was a huge honor and a recognition of the innovative work that's happening, and we share that honor with all of the communities that have been part of Watch For Me from the very beginning, or even more recently. So I think this is something that we are proud of what has been achieved to date, and we think that every new year we bring in new insights from new communities and voices, and the program continues to evolve. So some of the other benefits of participation that I wanted to point out are that being part of the Watch For Me program is very well connected to other initiatives that are happening. If your community is involved in Vision Zero, I think it connects very well to the activities of the Watch For Me program. If you are familiar with the walk-friendly communities or the bike-friendly communities applications, those are recognition programs that acknowledge the work that communities are doing, and a lot of what they score in those applications is around all of these different E's that the Watch For Me program touches on. not just the engineering, but the education, the role of law enforcement, and others. And finally, this program, while NCDOT is the primary driver of it, it does receive funds from the Governor's Highway Safety Program. They are heavily engaged in the program and on our steering committee. And they do offer, I guess they're not called points anymore, but credits, I believe, for eligible Watch For Me activities through their website as well. And so we do have a strong connection and support from the Governor's Highway Safety Program for Watch For Me related activities. So next I'll touch on some of what the participants get out of the program, be it materials or support. One thing that comes with being a formal Watch For Me partner is having materials and media provided by NCDOT. They coordinate and make the purchases and deliver a variety of media, whether it is transit ads, outdoor advertising, or posters and other print materials that are delivered to our communities when they're participating in our Watch For Me trainings. And Ed, I think we might get more questions around this later, but Ed and I can certainly answer questions about what communities get. It does vary by the community and by what the media market opportunities are in each area.
Certainly can.
But here's just some images of what has been delivered in the past. I'll make mention of a couple of things. The sidewalk boards that you see there, those are delivered to law enforcement that is doing targeted operations to increase driver yielding to pedestrians at certain locations. And a lot of times officers find these so helpful they go out and purchase more on their own after they're really not that expensive. For all of the materials that we provide, we also provide the vendor information so that if communities want more than what our program offers, they can go above and beyond and get some additional materials on their own. The bike light that you see there is another really popular item that is always in greater demand than we can supply. But those are also used in targeted activities to help increase bicyclist visibility at night. And so we use them in very focused ways on the program. We have also in the past used some clean graffiti that you can see here in the image on the left, which can help prompt pedestrians to look up at a certain crossing and to be aware of their surroundings. And then we've also in the past found different opportunities through gas tank toppers or Pandora to reach a broader driving population as well. So in addition to the materials, participants get technical assistance and training from the Highway Safety Research Center and from the peers who have been involved in the program for 1 or more years. We offer a specific law enforcement training series. I'll talk a bit more about that in the next slide. And also, one thing that's new this year is that we'll be offering an action planning workshop. I'll say that for another slide as well. The communities get access to template resources, other guidance, and also have access to a listserv and support from their peers. And all of these are really packaged in a way to help provide information and tools for when communities need it to address specific issues. The 2018 law enforcement program is going to be, for those who have been involved in the past, it is going to be similar in terms of the options available. We will still continue to have about between 4 and 6 full-day workshops that will be offered to new participants. And then we'll have another set of refresher half-day workshops that are for returning communities. The other piece I mentioned that's new is the action planning workshops. What we've heard in the past is that communities have valued our web-based meetings because that's a way to provide support to people who can't travel and to get folks, all talking together. But at the same time, they really value in-person opportunities to engage and to plan their community's needs for the year. And so these are going to be 4 half-day in-person workshops facilitated by our team to help guide communities through some of the partnership development and planning needed to make really effective use of the Watch For Me resources. And so we will schedule that, where those are occurring and the location based on the need of the communities that are accepted after the application process has been completed. So that's the what the communities get piece. And now I'll transition into the what communities give in return for that. One is the requirements ask for a complete application. That helps us assess your community's fit and readiness to be part of the program. We look for capacity, we look for partnerships, we look for your stated need, and we really pay attention to making sure that the Watch For Me communities are set up from the very beginning to get the most out of the Watch For Me program. We do require attendance in that action planning workshop and also for the officers to attend those either full day or half day trainings. The materials that are provided by NCDOT, we don't want those to sit on the shelf, so of course we require those to be disseminated and for communities to show their plan for how to engage their community with those materials. And then we do have this requirement for enforcement operations. I think the word operation is can be misleading. We don't want people to think that we're necessarily requiring citation type of programs. There's a lot of different models for how enforcement activities can look, as I mentioned. But we want to make sure that officers commit to being involved in some form or another. And then finally, as I mentioned, evaluation is a really important part of this program. Knowing what works, what happened, and what might be improved in the future is really helpful. So we do track how enforcement is conducted. We track how community engagement is happening. We track what policies are changing. And we try to do this in a streamlined and as easy as possible way. And so we ask for reports and responses to surveys that are shared online. And then we also ask for participation in an exit interview, kind of an annual interview conducted, where we can glean a little bit more of the qualitative outcomes of the program. And all of that is used to help create those community profiles and the reports that go up online. So we share all of that information back to the community to see what was working and what isn't. So now that you've heard a little bit more about the program and the requirements and the benefits, we're hoping that you're still on and interested in participating. And so I'll talk a little bit more about the steps to actually become an official partner. So one is just to confirm your eligibility. We do ask that it be either a municipal or a county agency to lead the application. They could have a university. If you have a police department, it can show the role of the law enforcement agency. But we don't have a precedent for a nonprofit leading the program. We feel like it's really important for the city or the county staff to have a stake in the program. And the applications, which I know some of you have already submitted. We're really excited to get so many applications this early in the cycle this year. But those are on the website now at the link provided. And those are due by 5 p.m. on March 23rd. And let's see here. So I think I've already touched a little bit on some of the criteria that we look for. Just making sure that the communities understand what the program is about and have a demonstrated capacity to be part of it and have a plan of action. We understand that that plan of action might be draft and that might be refined as we hold our in-person workshops. But it's very helpful to see what you have been doing already that could be built upon in the Watch For Me program in the future. And it's always helpful to see if there are any other resources that you may have to leverage the effectiveness of the program. One thing I will also note is that folks who have been part of past Watch For Me events or coalitions do have kind of an expedited review process, and they are not as competitive as the new partners. If you have been involved maybe in 1 year and then your community took a break or reevaluated or had a change of leadership, you don't have to have just participated in the last year. It's really at any time since the program took off in 2012. Sometimes we find that there's been turnover in a community and somebody doesn't actually know that their community has participated in the past. And so for that, I would look to our website to see some of the communities that are listed in the profiles. And if you have questions, you can always ask us and we can tell you if your community has been involved or if we might have been contacted by anybody with possibly a different department within your community. And we are happy to help make connections because we do realize that sometimes, especially with larger regions and larger agencies, it is hard to know, who else might already be involved and a champion for this kind of work within your community. So, in terms of the timeline, the applications will be due by March 23rd. Very soon thereafter, in April, we plan on announcing the new partners and as well as confirming the returning partners. Once we know who our participants are, we will jump in very quickly into scheduling those action workshops and trainings for the law enforcement. And we will look very closely to the input from the communities on acceptable dates and locations to help make sure that we're coming to you with events that you're able to attend. Most communities, after they've been part of the trainings, begin immediately planning their program activities. A lot of the outreach and engagement we've seen tends to occur in August to November timeframe. A lot of it gets tied to either National Night Out or back to school events. But really the program differs. And in some of our beach communities, they might get more involved early in the season if they're expecting large swells in tourism population over the summer. And so the time for the Watch For Me program differs. And ideally, it's something that is occurring year-round. But we do have a sense that sometimes communities that are new to the program aren't able to make that commitment in the first year. They're really just getting the ideas and the plans off the ground. And so having kind of a focused time period within the year is really helpful. Most of our longer term partners have now established their programs in that they're meeting regularly and doing events and activities more year-round. But I can certainly answer questions in that realm as well, if there are any others. So I think I've gotten through what I wanted to provide, but I know that there will be a lot of questions from you on, and in particular, I think the time commitment is a big question. One thing I'll say is we do try to track that when we talk with what communities have spent in the past. I think the average that we've heard pretty regularly is that during the peak activities, it can be about 20 hours a month. But it really, that range of time involved for the lead person really will depend on where you are in the year and how many, what your coalition looks like. We have some communities like Dare County that they're coordinating across many municipalities in one area. Those large regional coordinations sometimes require more time commitment. But one thing we've heard is that consistently the communities that are involved feel like the time commitment can be reduced in subsequent years as they get more of a rhythm and their plan figured out. It's probably most involved in the first year of the project. And also, for returning communities who are on the line, you are welcome to share any of your perspective on the time commitment in the chat box for others who are still thinking about this. I think it's really useful to know that and be eyes wide open about that, because we've seen that that's probably one of the biggest challenges to communities feeling like they're able to participate in the program. And Nancy and Ed and Kristen, feel free to weigh in on this or let me know if there's other questions that are coming up.
This is Ed, and one thing that I'd recap with what Laura has presented and talked about, especially to the new applying communities that's been celebrated through previous participating communities, is the partnership emphasis. It's important to not only reach out to universities or schools or municipalities with law enforcement agencies and to partner in that way, but also think about some of the non-traditional partners that you might engage in order to advance a better understanding of the walking and biking that may be occurring or not occurring within your communities, and how you can work with them, and then how they can be engaged by letters of support or participate in the dissemination of the information and sharing within those service areas.
Thanks, Ed. Yeah, that's a really good point. And I would certainly underscore the role of reaching out to any, active bike clubs or pedestrian advocacy groups. And I know Bike Walk NC is the statewide advocacy group. I'm not sure if we have Lisa Riegel on the call today, but she could, if you're not sure who in your community might be a champion on the advocacy side, we can certainly put you in touch with folks from Bike Walk NC who can help identify members that might be in your region that should be part of either the application or the Watch For Me program.
Thanks, Laura. So we actually do have one other question coming in, and it is, how many applications do you typically get in a given year, and how many are accepted?
That's a good question. I could say we've seen a lot of variation from year to year, and the acceptance really depends on the resources that NCDOT has. I would say we've received anywhere between, I think probably around a dozen each year are the new communities that we have had apply. That might be an average. And I can say last year I believe we were able to accept everybody. In years past that hasn't been the case, and it really depends on the quality of the application, and then again how much funding NCDOT has for the training and the media resources. Ed, do you want to say anything from your perspective on how selective we might be this year?
Certainly, we're looking to move in the same direction. Funding is always competitive for Bike TED, but we want to get creative with our training materials and how to use those and using the advertising agency through our communications department to get the word out, to get the message out, but also to provide the recipients the necessary training materials to teach folks about what it is to be present, aware, predictable, be seen as they're walking and biking, and then what that understanding is, especially from a law enforcement standpoint. So we'll look to do some of the same material that we've done in the past. We may have some options towards being creative and how we can engage in some of that creativity for sharing that information. If you all have ideas about that, please feel free to submit that. We're certainly open to a better understanding and wanting to serve you as your, for lack of a better quote, the boots on the ground for having disseminating that information and how that can best serve you all. That's our goal. So if you have ideas towards that, please feel free to share.
We have another question specifically about resources, and the question is, are there resources available to assist with developing designated bike lanes?
So UNC Highway Safety Research Center provides the technical assistance. We certainly have a team who can help with looking at crash data or plans that your community has for specific infrastructure, and we can, I think we can share the literature on best practices and research. I don't believe we can provide, that consulting role on the actual design or placement of the facilities, but certainly we have a team with the expertise that can help provide some guidance on critical safety infrastructure for pedestrians and bicyclists.
And this is Ed. One thing I'll add to that as well, if you are looking at infrastructure needs, and if it is a DOT-owned road or a municipally owned road, either one, or if you just don't know, again, the technical resources are here, certainly through the subject matter experts at UNC, and we're here to assist them in whatever way we can with the DOT in our division. But work with your municipality as well. If there is a local bike club or a advocacy coalition that is perhaps looking at introducing bike lanes or that kind of infrastructure, that conversation will start with the local municipality and the NCDOT division staff. And we can certainly help to put you in touch with those folks. The other shameless plug that I'll offer is that we will have, beginning sometime in April or May, Complete Streets training offered that will be offered from the staff at Highway Safety Research Center and NCDOT for what is Complete Streets and what types of considerations are available for Complete Streets when we say those broad brush terms. And so be on the lookout for more information and what that can mean in perhaps increasing your knowledge base for helping with Watch for Me NC and your partner organizations in your communities.
We didn't have a question, but it was more of a comment about the time commitment. One of the new communities reported that it's about 20 hours per month for new communities to start when they first enter the program.
So that was about right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Good. That's good to validate.
Yeah. So we haven't received any other questions. I wanted to ask the participants listening, maybe you've already started the application and you have questions about specific items that we're asking. Does anyone have any questions about any of the application questions? Can give a few seconds to type that out.
might have answered everyone's questions at this point. Well, certainly if you think of anything else, we've got Kristen's email on the slide in front of you, blank@hsrc.unc.edu. She will be working closely with me, with Nancy Pullen-Suford and Sarah O'Brien, who are on the call, with Ed, and we can collectively triage your question, and we will be very excited to hear from you and to look forward to working with the new Watch For Me communities in 2018. Thank you all for your time on the webinar today, and I think we can go ahead and end the call.